Hey, and welcome back to Finding Your Summit. This is Mark Pattison, and this week I'm totally jacked up because we have Brad McLeod, who is a former Navy SEAL. You know, when I grew up, I dreamed of becoming either a professional athlete, a Navy SEAL, or an Olympic athlete. So obviously, I didn't get to do all three of those things. I did become an NFL player, which was cool, but I've always been so fascinated on what it's like to actually become. I mean, what does that mean? You just don't show up and you just don't take a few courses and go through some tough training exercises. So in their case, going through BUD/S and trying to make it through all his setbacks and whatnot. So now he is out of the SEAL business, so to speak, in terms of being an actual Navy SEAL, and has a business called SEAL Grinder PT, which we talk about. It's really fascinating to understand and hear his journey. So it's really cool. So as always, if you like it, share, review on iTunes, tell a friend, tell the planet. We love having more podcast listeners out there and just really interesting people today and on the horizon. So on that note, enjoy the podcast. Brad McLeod. I'm really jacked up to have Brad on the podcast this week. Brad is a former Navy SEAL, and he's got some really cool things going. He's actually out mountain biking somewhere on the East Coast, I think in Virginia. So, Brad, welcome to the show.
Good to be here.
So the name of my podcast is called Finding Your Summit, and I just want to get into your background and guys who have set high goals and gone after it. And, you know, it's not just about reaching your summit. It's also about the journey, how it goes. And like most things, there's setbacks. And so why don't we go back to kind of growing up? Where did that happen? And ultimately, you know, where was this idea that came up in your head? Like, I want to go try out for BUD/S, the Navy SEAL program. Where did that come from?
Yeah, I was just born right here, Florida-Georgia line. I was born in Thomasville, Georgia, moved over to Tallahassee when I was about 7 years old, grew up here, went to high school. And, you know, I was pretty much like any other average guy growing up. You know, I played a little bit of sports, but was never really that good at it. And actually spent a lot of time just skateboarding. You know, I kind of didn't quite fit into the structured baseball, football, things like that. But I found a good outlet in skateboarding. But yeah, as a high school teenager, you know, I kind of got into a little bit of everything, you know, running around, chasing girls, chasing the next 6-pack of beer, the next party, whatever. And, you know, as I graduated high school, I really didn't have any clear goals as to what I wanted to do. But I did read a book that it talked about, you know, the Navy SEALs and the frogmen of old. And I don't know, just something just resonated inside of me. I really didn't have any other aspirations in life, but for some reason, I just really gravitated towards that. You know, I just, you know, maybe like the kid from Kansas that, you know, grew up on a farm or whatever and, you know, read a book about Hollywood or saw something on TV. And it's like, it just kind of, you know, it just resonated with me, you know. And for the same thing with that kid in Kansas, he was just like, man, I'm going to go out to Hollywood and I'm going to be a star. And, you know, for me, me saying that to other people, you know, my friends, my family, whoever, for me to say, you know, at the end of high school there, hey, I'm going to go join the Navy and become a Navy SEAL, you know, they pretty much, everybody laughed at me. They're like, yeah, right. You know, I mean, I was be pretty much like that kid in Kansas, like, you know, yeah, right. You're going to be a Hollywood star. You know, yeah, you're going to be a NASA astronaut, because I really didn't have anything that gave anyone to really believe that I could do it. You know, it was that far-fetched. I wasn't a top, you know, A, B student, didn't play sports, wasn't a letterman. Just kind of drifted, you know, I had, you know, a lot of friends, whatever, but really didn't have any main focus. So to all of a sudden talk about something as far-fetched as that, it's just, it was pretty much just a foreign concept to everyone. But, you know, I knew deep down inside that I had to prove that to myself, that at least I was going to go for it and I was going to try it. And so, I just signed up for the Navy. And back then, you know, you didn't take the test and beforehand and then decide if you want to go in the Navy. You know, now that's what they do. They take a test to get a contract. Well, back then you had to sign up the regular Navy and go to San Diego or wherever and then take the test then. So if I didn't pass that test while in the Navy, I would be locked into 4 years, 2 years reserve, 6 years on a Navy ship. So yeah, luckily I passed the test. The one thing I really had going for me too, though, is I started dabbling around with weights. And so I used to, I said I'd skateboarded, but I skateboarded about every day, but I also lifted weights. And so that at an early age helped me to build some discipline.
So let me ask you this. When you talk about a test, right, what is that test?
While I was in boot camp, I had to swim, I think it's 500 meters with either a side stroke or breaststroke. You can't freestyle. And then you get out of the pool, you have like a 1-2 minute rest, and then you do as many push-ups as you can do in 2 minutes, then as many sit-ups as you can do in 2 minutes, then you do as many pull-ups as you can do in as long as you can hang on the bar. And they have to be dead hang, good push, good pull-ups. They can't be kipping. And then you get off the bar, and I think you have like a 2 minute rest, and then you run 1.5 miles. And back then we ran them with boots and these old like Navy jeans. So, you're not out there with like your $100 sneaks and your compression socks and your shorts. And I was running in jeans with a belt and these things called boondockers, or these boots, So yeah, I passed the test myself and one other guy. So there was probably 30 guys that tried out for that test. And I was one of two out of the 30 who passed that test.
You pass a test just so you can qualify then to go to this next stage or next level of trying to become this is all before buds, right?
Yeah, all before buds.
Okay.
All before buds. So there's a screen, and then they screen you again, and they screen you again. And the other way they screen you is you had to have a Asvab, it's kind of like a college SAT. You had to take an Asvab test, and you had to score really high to even get into buds, that they don't just take the bottom tier guys. So there's a mental academic test, and luckily I passed high enough for that. And then there's a really extensive dive physical. So any little thing with your eyes, you have to have perfect vision. You have to have perfect lungs. You can't have any plates in your body, or you can't have had depression or anxiety in the past, anything like that. Really heavy duty screening, which actually gets a lot of guys. You can pass the test, but guy has like a plate in his, ankle, even though he can run fast. They just don't want anybody that could break down, in combat. So there's several screenings. They're probably very similar to your pass in the NFL. You're always being tested, and if you don't pass, then you go home.
You're out.
Exactly.
Like in the terms of the push-ups, you did those in 2 minutes. How many push-ups are we talking?
People have asked me that, and it was so long ago, I can't even really remember. I think the minimum you need to do is like 60. I don't know. I probably did, maybe 80 plus or something.
Yeah.
And my scores were never really that great. I'm an average guy. I was not some stud athlete in high school. I just was really your average C plus guy. But I'll talk about it later, the things that I was able to do really well that actually turned me, a C guy, into A minus guy, I'd say, But I had to go learn a skill, because I had to go to A school and learn radio communications.
What does A represent? Is that an acronym for a name, or?
Yeah, it's kind of like after high school, you go to like a vocational school. Maybe you learn welding. Maybe you learn to be a cook. Maybe you learn to be a medic. For me, it was radio communications, satellite communications. That's what I learned as my skill, because what happened back then is the washout rate was so high. What they wanted you to at least have, and to show proficiency, is that you could learn a skill, show up every day, do the task, and your chances of washing out, which were extremely high. So when you wash out, then when you go back out to the Fleet Navy, the ship, you would have a skill to use. If not, they'd have you as a boatswain's mate, or you'd be just chipping paint. And so you need to have a skill. And it's one more test. You can't go to A school and start partying and think, oh, yeah, wow, I got a contract to buds. I'm a badass, whatever. Really, you're nobody. You got to keep your nose clean for another 2 months, to learn the skill.
Yep. So now you go through A school. So you've gone through these 2 qualifying tests, right? And now You get through that, you score well, and now you're off to BUDS. And by the way, what does BUDS stand for?
It stands for Basic Underwater Demolition SEAL Training. And that school is, I was in San Diego for boot camp and A school. I went across the bay to Coronado, which is like Disney World almost. It's so pretty. There's like sailboats there and the ocean and everything, but that's where the BUDS camp. You'd think it'd be in like some place like a Louisiana swamp or something, just where frogmen hang out. But in a way, it's just this idyllic setting, Southern California, and that's where you train.
It sounds like they just lure you in, man, with the beautiful beaches and dolphins out there jumping, and then they torture you.
Yeah. I lined up that first day there in BUDS, and you're on the infamous grinder. So, it's that's the place where every frogman in training, every tadpole has to go through and be a part of that grinder with blood, sweat, tears, skin, everything else. And I stood there that first day, 140 guys or 139 other guys. And I looked around, and here I am, all of 5'8", 165 pounds, not a letterman, not an A student. Didn't have any inkling that, people would say, hey, man, I'm putting money on this guy. This guy's tough as nails. I'm putting money on him. Nobody said that. Nobody gave me a chance. I looked around. Mark, I was intimidated as hell. I thought, man, I'm done, man. It's going to be 1 week and I'm done. Everybody around me was, or at least it seemed, I was just getting freaked out. Everybody there, 6'1", chiseled, freaking 190 pounds, broad-chested. You got guys that swam in high school. You got guys that talking about track. One dude's talking about how many times he could press 300 pounds, and he's like doing, like the first couple of days, he's doing extra push-ups, and all the other guys are looking at him like, holy crap, that guy's a badass, because he was saying it wasn't hard enough for him. What I learned really quickly, and that's where I went from a C- average middle guy to actually figuring out, hey, man, I think I can make this, is that in the second and third week, the first week they go pretty easy on you. They're just kind of feeling it out and kind of grading everybody. The second week, man, they just turn up the heat. And not only are you PTing harder on the grinder, you're getting up early. They're putting a water hose sprinkler out on you in the morning. It's dark, They make you go hit the surf, sit in the surf. Then you go to chow. You go do obstacle course. You swim. You're in the pool with drown proofing, getting, hands tied together. Underwater 50-meter swims. Just a lot of things are starting to get guys knocked out. They're quitting, or they can't make a 50-meter swim, or they freak out because their hands are tied together, or they're like, screw this, I'm not going in the surf again. I've been in and out of the surf 6 times a day. I am not going in, and it's dark out, and screw this, I'm going home. And so I look around, and that same guy that was talking about how many times he could bench press 300 pounds, he quit. He was in the surf, got up, and quit. And I was like, holy crap. The light went on in my head, and I saw an inkling of the real game. The game was not how big, if you're bigger, faster, or stronger. The game was, can you take a beating and show us that you want to stay? Can you be a good teammate? And instantly, if your buddy needs water, you're handing him your water. If your buddy's gear needs straightening up, or there's sand all in his hair, you brush the sand out of his hair. You pay attention to your buddy first before you do anything with yourself. And as you can imagine, how that relates to combat, how that relates to hard training situations, and how that relates to a brotherhood. So they're not looking they're not looking for the number 1, 2, 3 guy that can run, swim, and do pull-ups. That's great. Yes, you have every day, you get tested on obstacle course, swim, run, pull-ups, all that. If you don't make the cut, you're out of there. But you could be a C average student in pull-ups, sit-ups, swim, diving, scuba, obstacle course, all the academics. You could be a C student, but if you kick ass and an instructor sees you over there, you're brushing your buddy off and you're handing him your water, you're giving him a massage, you're like patting him on the back and, hey man, that's what they're looking for.
All these physical things that you were doing, what was the one physical thing that you found like was the most difficult thing that you had to do?
The single most difficult physical thing was probably log PT.
And what does that mean?
A lot of special forces groups find old logs and telephone poles, and they put 5, 6, 7 guys underneath the pole based on height. And it's what I think is one of the ultimate teamwork development tools that's out there. You're asked to perform a command. You're given a verbal command, and you have to then perform exactly how the instructor gives you that command with the rep count, call back to him. And so you're basically under load, under pressure, and they want to see how are you going to perform when you're put under a load. Yes, you've got to have the physical side of it, but you've got to keep listening to the commands and performing the commands when you have a man in front and back of you. And you can relate to this as much as anybody being in the NFL. And imagine your offensive line. You know, they have to have that ability to listen to the command, the count for the quarterback getting ready to receive the ball, and then be able to come off the line and perform and move through the play. So it's really, very similar to what you would have, say, in football with your linemen, being able to block, being able to execute, being able to get punched in the mouth. You're sweating, it's raining on you, whatever's happening. They're spraying you with a water hose even. They want to see who's going to crack under pressure. And, what you obviously don't want to do is turn around to the guy behind you and scream at him and start bitching and moaning. Or, if you suffer, you have to internalize that. You have to suffer in silence. It's a famous thing that you hear there. Nothing worse than you crying out and infecting everyone else in the group. So there's like so many things that it hits on right there. And you do that again and again and again and again. So that's probably the most painful thing from a physical standpoint. There were a lot more mental things that happened, but yeah, from a physical standpoint, that one stands out. Yeah.
I remember, and I think you can relate to this, when I had talent. I was recruited, to play football all over the country, and I chose the University of Washington. And up to that point, and especially in those days, there wasn't a whole lot of training like they train now and start with the weights and whatnot. And so I pretty much just showed up on the first day of camp. And I remember standing there. I mean, this was like yesterday. It seemed like, this is, I'm 18. I go out on the first day of fall and sometime in mid-August, and there's all these guys. I'm looking around, and everybody else is an All-American from somewhere, but they were built, they're gunned, they're ready, they're mentally tough, and I just looked at, and I'm like, I am so far in over my head. Because I hadn't done any of those things. And I think one of the points you're making is that you got to physically come in and be ready so that you can take on these physical challenges, so that as you going through these tough things, you mentally don't crack. And I don't think it works the other way around. I don't think you can get mentally strong and then physically build up. I think you need to have that in front first so that you can take those things on, right?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, I needed to have that baseline physical part, but I also had to turn on the mental and be able to figure out, like I said, that game. What was the real game? The real game was not tapping out, not quitting, helping your teammate before yourself, and not worrying so much. Like I say, I was intimidated by all these other guys, and I was intimidated by, these guys can swim faster or run faster than me. And I had to not focus on that. I just had to focus on staying in the game, not tapping out, helping my teammate every single day, rinse and repeat. So
now you moving down the tracks here a little bit, you get through, and this is the part of it that I don't understand. In terms of, there's a finality of if you make it through Navy SEAL, and of course they're cutting people or people are failing certain tests, but are there certain levels that you have to pass in? And if you don't pass it, are you out, or can you come back and try that level, or how does that work?
My story is that I got over halfway through, made it through Hell Week, made it through the initial part of dive phase where, you're underwater. They pull your mask off, your regulator out of your mouth, turn you upside down. Guys fell out right then. And so I got past that, and believe it or not, I failed a math test. And, the cut there is just ruthless. If they give you 2 times, if you don't pass anything, it could be 50-meter underwater swim, it could be obstacle course, it could be academics. I passed everything else, got to that thing with academics, and I just froze up on that second test, made like a 65, and that was it. And I was just, man, tears in my eyes. I was like, can y'all send me across the street back over to the naval base and let me do like a remedial math course or whatever? And it was like, no, you're going to the fleet. It's, there's no mercy there. And looking back on it, it's the best thing that ever happened to me. And looking back on it too, it wouldn't be SEAL training if they just kind of like, oh yeah, little Brad, you go over here and we'll give you a private tutor and we'll put you in your own room in the barracks and we'll set you up, and in 2 months you come back. No, man, it's ruthless. They sent me out to the Fleet Navy. Of course, I had that skill as a radioman, but I was chipping paint, swabbing the decks, working in the chow hall, delivering cans of soup or eggs or whatever it was they needed. I was using that as like a workout. And but yeah, I had to leave and go to the fleet for a year. And as you can imagine, there's no really good workout room, and most of the guys on the ship don't work out anyway. Partly because that's not, what they think about, but also in that it's hard to work out on a ship when the ship's moving,
Yeah, no, I've been on ships like that. I understand that. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's like I was in the worst possible place to be, short of being in actually, if you were in prison, you probably would have better workouts. I was in a bad spot, man. And so I had to stay out there for a year. And as you can imagine, once you get in the fleet, they don't want to turn you back loose to buds again, because the way they look at it is like, look, dumbass, you failed out the first time. Why should we give you a chance to go back when there's 100 other guys wanting to take your spot that are qualified for their first time around? They didn't want to let me off the ship,
Okay, so now a year goes by, and now you're going back to go through this buds training again. Are you going through the entire program again, or are you just taking that math test?
No. In fact, what happened is they're incredibly strict. There's zero slack there. I can assure you, I'm living proof of it. Before I could even go back to buds, when I was on the ship, I had to come over and take that same dive test again up in the dive locker with one of the instructors looking over me, and I took the test. And talk about a monkey on my back and being under pressure. It's like if I didn't pass right then I was screwed. Luckily, I passed. Thank the Lord or whoever, higher power. So I passed. Then they go, okay, great. Now you're going to start back at day 1. That's how strict they are. They made me take the test first, again, just to even give me back my day 1 slot.
Right.
It wasn't like, oh yeah, little Johnny, come on over and we'll put you right back in where you stopped before. Hell no. So I had to go all the way back through again, go through a winter hell week again.
Wow.
Same drill, 140 guys lined up. And I finally made it through the second time, passed the math test again, all that. I had no problems. I mean, in terms of, I didn't get flagged again on something else, and made it all the way to the end.
So now you make it to the end, and then what? So now at that point, I almost picture, this is I know it didn't happen like this, but I almost picture like the Top Gun movie, where Tom Cruise, he finally passes his gig and they're fighting with ice and the other guys. And then they immediately, like the next day after they're celebrating, they get shipped off to somewhere in some ocean, and there's this conflict, and they get up there with the Russians or something and battling out. So how did it work for you?
We had 16 guys that ended up passing out of the 140. So less than 20% made it. From there, we all packed up. They do it a little differently now than they did back then, but we all packed up and they shipped us off to Fort Benning in South Georgia. Of course, for us, that was just easy, compared to what we've been through. So that was 3 weeks, taught us how to jump. And then from there, you go to a team. So as you can imagine, being on a team as a new guy, I would almost think like with the pros or something, coming in as a rookie or whatever. They call them, you're called an FNG. You can imagine, give you the first word, F and
yep.
Fucking new guy, and everything, you've got to do everything that they don't want to do, which is fine. and a little bit of mild hazing, but nothing too bad. But yeah, I mean, you've got to hustle super hard, because right then you're under observation every single day. If you don't make the cut, then let's just say you go out late, drinking and driving, DUI, boom, you're out. Smoking weed, boom, you're out. Steroids, out. Fighting in town, you're out. The list goes on. And so I think everybody in our class, we didn't have a problem, but here and there were guys that go for their next 6 months, and they get shipped back out of the fleet because they get popped on a piss test, or they're fighting in town, or some problem. But essentially, you're 6 months under review before you can get your trident. And in that meantime, what you're doing every day too, you're jumping, you're swimming, you're rappelling out of helicopters. Every single day is different. You know, you're planning demolitions, you're shooting, you're in a kill house. You know, just every single day is something that could harm you. And like log PT, you have to listen to the command and perform the command exactly as they say. If you step off of a firing line or in a kill house, you step the wrong direction in the kill house, and they've either got sim rounds, you get popped in the back of the head with a sim round, it's going to hurt like hell. Or, God forbid, you step the wrong way and you're in a kill house, or you're on a live shooting firing range and you're doing contact drills. You know, those are live rounds. You know, I've been out in training before, and guys, we set up an ambush. Long story short is we set up an ambush in training. I was inside of that 6-month period, and one of the Claymore mines, the way that it was directed towards the ambush, it was off by a few degrees. And one of those rounds, which is shot, it's a shotgun like BB, shotgun lead round. It's shot off of plastic explosives, which moves at a super high rate of detonation. So not only is the round moving super, super fast, but it's just white hot. And I watched one of those rounds go through my buddy's leg in a training evolution and just sear the meat off, of his leg there. And that's just basic. We're just doing basic training type stuff. But, you know, if you look on the back of the Claymore mine, it gives you exact instructions of what you've got to do with this Claymore mine.
I assume that you made it through, you know, this 6-month program, right?
Yes.
Okay, so now you've got, you know, again, this is the general public. You know, there's SEAL Team 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. How far does it go up, and what does that mean?
Well, I went to SEAL Team 4, and back in the day, before the big war, after 9/11, we were all broken into hemispheres. And so Team 4 was a South American group. And so we did all of the Caribbean, rough duty, Caribbean and South America and Central America. And partly the reason I got picked or drafted was because I had a year of high school Spanish. So I spoke a little bit of Spanish, just rudimentary Spanish. And so I got drafted, say, to that team, to Team 4. And so at that time, there were only 6, up to SEAL Team 6, there were only 6 teams. Team 8 was just getting commissioned as I was leaving. Team 6 is not really looked at it is not a regular SEAL team. So you really can't say there were 6 SEAL teams. They are DevGru, or DamNec. And so really they're a SEAL team, but they're not really a SEAL team. SEAL teams are actually Tier 2 operators. So we're the same as Green Beret, Army PJs, Rangers. Your regular, say run of the mill. I mean, you're still elite, but your regular run of the mill SEAL team guys are Tier 2. Team 6 is Tier 1. Delta Force is Tier 1. There's a couple other, no-name groups out there that are Tier 1. So to get drafted to Tier 1, you've got to obviously be the elite, the top 1% of all SEAL teams to even get drafted to there. So, so that's kind of how the hierarchy goes.
Essentially what happens then, and again, I know that this is pre-9/11, but you guys would be deployed all over the world, and then you're going through all these training missions and whatnot on basically red alert, right, to jump in and to go do something crazy if called upon.
Yeah, I mean, every day, just like, if you were to go to work at, say, a factory every day and You had your tasks that you would do, same way, 9 to 5. Well, sometimes it'd be a 16-hour day or even a 24-hour day, but that's what we did every day. But every day was different. You were training every single day. I don't even remember for 2 years, I don't think I was in one place for more than 2 weeks, and just traveled all over the shooting schools, climbing schools, diving schools. Yeah, they're continually training you. And if there is an emergency, which there often is, your group can easily get pulled right in. And next thing you know, you're in a classroom or a warehouse, and they're giving a briefing. And hey, this is it. This is scenario, and this is what you're going to do. And and you can see that then when all the training starts coming back to you, is that you have to listen to the command, perform the command, and trust in your teammate next to you.
Again, going back to what I opened up with about what this podcast is all about, which is finding your summit. And, I keep talking about it's really a part of the journey. And just listening to your story, weren't really a big athlete in school, didn't excel in the classroom, but you had this goal and you went after the goal. And then the thing that you wanted to do the most, you don't make it back. So then you have to go do something awful for a year and be on the ship. Then you end up coming back and having to start this whole thing all over again. And then even when you pass buds, then you go on to a team and, the entire time you're being evaluated whether or not you would actually be a great team member. And so for 6 months, you're grinding it out. And, it's just, again, you probably look back on that and there's ups and downs and things in between. But again, it's the journey, not necessarily that, you accomplished that thing, but it was just, as you moved along through the process, that's the rewarding thing. And that's a really cool way to go about life. So SEAL Grinder PT. So for everybody out there, what is that? I know that you're a very active guy. Right now, I'm talking to you on your cell phone. You're out there mountain biking somewhere, which is awesome. And, tell me what your life has become about, because I know it has a lot to do with working out and goal setting and things like that. So I think it'd be really cool to talk about that for a minute.
Yeah, I've always just had that attachment to, like I say, that very day that I stood out on the grinder and looked out there and, I was intimidated. I was full of fear, but I had to overcome those fears. And so that grinder is almost, for me, it's like, it's just an analogy to say you're now stepping out onto the mat in the dojo, and you're getting ready to step into this new realm of where you don't know what's going to happen completely. There's a lot of unknown, but based on your training, you need to be ready for anything at any time. So the other side of that is that the grinder itself is almost like the warm-up practice field that you guys have in the NFL, where you get out there and you do warm-up drills, and you stretch, you do push-ups, we have pull-ups that go all the way around the whole grinder there. We have dip bars, and we have every morning that discipline of a good, hard, when you come out of there, you're sweating unless it's like 48 degrees in the morning, but you do a hard workout, and that's how you start every single day. I don't remember any one day that you didn't start on the grinder with something. Now, you could have just come off a hell week and be all banged up, but you're probably going to do a lot more yoga, stretching, and stuff like that, and real light calisthenics. But the point of it is that every single day you do something to not only work your physical body, but also the other side of it with the grinder is that you have to work on the fears. You have to work on, expanding your horizons. You have to not be intimidated. You have to push through boundaries. And so that's where I just came up with that word. It popped in my head, SEAL Grinder PT. It was kind of goofy, but it just kind of said what all I'm talking about right here is just a place where we work out the physical and the mental every day.
Does that mean people are coming to you to your physical location somewhere?
No, actually, we're online mostly. 98% of our business is online. We have athletes everywhere, Hong Kong, Norway, of course, a lot in the U.S., Puerto Rico, Canada. I do travel, have traveled to Ireland, Puerto Rico, Canada, a lot in California. But this past year, my daughter's really been sick. And so I've ratcheted down the number of events where I travel to. And I have one event coming up this July in Montana. we call it the Freak Frog, Montana. But my whole family's going out with me, my daughter, everyone. So this year I haven't traveled as much. But in the past, I would travel, 10, 11 times a year, about once a month. And I would travel to other grinders, a lot of CrossFit gyms, a lot of military establishments, and train those athletes, not only in the push-ups and the pull-ups, but talk about the mental side, about mental toughness, about not giving up, and how to be a good teammate, teaching them the ways that I learned back my first day in Buds, how to be a good teammate. I always believe that that's a foundation of, like I said, you could be fastest, jump the highest, do 225-pound bench press 30 times, whatever. But if your mind isn't right and you're not a good teammate, a lot of times a coach will not pick you, or you may not make the team. So a lot of times a coach is going to want a good teammate first, and then help to develop their skills. So
where you're talking about, Brad, where they can find you online is www.sealgrinderpt.com, right?
That's it. Yeah, you can type that into Google, Seal Grinder PT or Seal Grinder, and it'll pop right up. Yeah, we've been online for about over 7 years now. So we've been around for a while and got a lot of articles, a lot of free stuff. Athletes can email me. I answer all my own emails. I don't have an assistant or any of that stuff. Brad at sealgrinderpt.com. I answer 20, 30 emails a day personally. I don't have anybody help me with that.
That is great. And you and I are kindred spirits, so to speak. I work out and I climb mountains and, having played in the NFL. And a lot of that is just every day going out and doing something positive. And I really feel like it sets up your day to do, not everybody can be a professional athlete or climb mountains, but you can go out and work out and you can do the type of things that you're talking about. And that just puts you in a great mindset to take on other things that might be a challenge in your life. And it's just great that you've, in part, provided a roadmap for those who want to seek it out to go and actually download this different stuff, see how you're doing. I got to tell you, too, I think I was on your site last year, and I was checking it out, and I'm always looking for something that's kind of new and different. And one of the things I saw on your site was a workout called the Murph. And I got to tell you, man, the Murph is a mother.
Oh, yeah.
And so explain that really quick, what that is.
Well, it's named after Lieutenant Michael Murphy, who unfortunately passed away in Afghanistan. It's in the book, Lone Survivor. Lieutenant Michael Murphy went out into an exposed area so that he could get satellite communications and call in support for his teammates. He, of course, exposed himself out on that rocky crag, and when he did, he took enemy fire and of course, was killed. But he was able to get the call out. So it's Murph. He paid the ultimate sacrifice, and a workout, as the legend goes, the workout that he used to do once a week or whenever was he would put on his weighted vest and he would go out and he'd run a mile and he'd do 100 pull-ups, 200 push-ups, 300 air squats with the vest. Then you run a mile. It's now a famous workout. Every Memorial Day, that's a way that we pay homage and respect to Murph. And yeah, I know everybody can't do it with a weighted vest. You don't have to. Everybody can do 100 pull-ups. It's fine. You can do Australian pull-ups, or that you can do the push-ups without the vest. You can partition it like Cindy, like the CrossFit Cindy workout, and do 20 rounds. So there's a lot of ways. You don't have to do it strict. A lot of people do. But the fact that you're out there and you're on the grinder or your driveway or wherever, and you're doing it and you're respecting Murph and his sacrifice and the others that sacrifice, that's what it's all about. If you do it strict, it's crazy hard.
I was doing the Murph for a period of time in my training on Denali, which I got off of about 3 weeks ago. The push-ups for me, no problem. The 1.5 mile run, no problem. The sit-ups, no problem. Pull-ups, that was a problem. You got to break it down. At least I had to break it down. I wasn't doing all these things, and I'd do like 50 push-ups, and then I'd do 50 air squats, and then I'd do 10 pull-ups. And I just, the thing I struggle the most with is those pull-ups. But that's why Rome was not built in a day, and you got to keep at it, and it motivates you next time, and just get one more than you got the day before, and you're on the right track.
Yeah, it's a workout. You can do it once every month, every 2 months, and train for next year to get ready for next year. And it's like, how do you eat an elephant? You do it, one chunk at a time. And yeah, you just don't step off the couch and try to do Murph with a weight vest. It's like you need to, just like you're trying to train for a marathon. You want to run a 1 mile, you want to run a 3 mile, you want to run a 6 mile, etc. And you want to slowly build your way up. Same thing with Murph. It's that level of workout where, unless you're just an elite athlete, more power to you. But most of us are going to have to get out there and do it in small chunks. But the biggest thing is the intent and showing your respect for those that have sacrificed for us. And so that's also the big part of it too. Yep.
That's great. Well, listen, Brad, thank you so much for coming on. Your story is great. And, it's just about, it's really about not mattering where you start in life. It's where you end up, and you still have this journey that you're paving the way on, helping others and showing that there are possibilities out there. And, you just got to put your mind to it, and we can overcome anything. So again, where can we find you?
SteelGrinderPT.com. You can email me, Brad at SteelGrinderPT.com, and type it into Google, what have you. I'm really easy to get in touch with. I answer the phone. Got questions, text me, email me. I love helping athletes. That's where I find my purpose, is when I'm helping people, I'm the happiest. So anything I can do to help other athletes achieve their dreams. They don't have to be going for buds. Whatever it is, trying to be a better dad, trying to be a better teammate in the workplace, whatever it is, if I can help them, I'm more than happy to bend over backwards to get that done.
That's great. All right, Brad. Well, listen, appreciate it. Continue your bike ride. I know I interrupted you on that, but it's all good. So again, thank you so much.
Thank you, Mark.
Thank you so much for listening to the Find Your Summit podcast. We are so glad to have you along for this journey. And if you enjoy the show, please tell a friend, share it on iTunes, spread it to the planet. We're looking to broadcast this to every person that is out there because, as you know, everybody has their own summit that they're going after. If you're looking to follow my journey, you can find that through my social links on markpattisonnfl.com. That's M-A-R-K, Pattison, P-A-T-T-I-S-O-N, NFL.com. So, until the next podcast, just remember, clear eyes, full hearts. It takes a little more to make a champion, so make it happen. Thank you. Bye.